Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. I'm Jody Robson. You might remember me from a certain baking show. I'm here to bake with you today. We are going to make a very simple, very forgiving, easy to make honey cake. Now I know typically people think of little biscuits stacked up high with filling when they think of honey cake. This is not your traditional honey cake. It's literally just a soft, spongy cake that's been sweetened with a lot of honey. In addition to the honey, we're also going to add some berries and whipped cream. For this recipe, you will need 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of buttermilk, 3/4 cups of granulated sugar, 3 large eggs, half a teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, honey, berries, and vanilla. All right, let's get started. So to begin, I'm going to sift 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour with my baking soda and baking powder and the salt. And we're just gonna sift it all to make it nice and fluffy. Love those little ramekins. So I have this obsession with ramekins. I don't know why, but I have a million of them and I use them for like everything. All right, so dry ingredients are ready. We're gonna set these aside and mix up the wet ingredients. Okay, so for wet ingredients, we have 1 cup of buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk on hand, again, this recipe is very forgiving. You can go ahead and use either 1 cup of sour milk or 1 cup of regular milk. And you can add in either 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, or even a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and let it sit on the counter for a bit to sour. And it works really well in this recipe. I do recommend just using one of those methods as opposed to just regular milk. It won't have the same tender flakiness or bounce back, or it won't taste like a cake. All right, so you can use as much or as little honey as you want. The recipe that I have written is 3/4 of a cup of honey. I'm free pouring. You can use as much or as little as you like. Remember to save some for decorating in the end. So that's about 3/4 of a cup. And I'm just gonna whisk them together. And we're gonna set this aside and cream the butter and eggs together next. You'll need a lot of bowls. All right. Okay, now we're ready to begin the butter and egg. All right, so I've started creaming my butter. I have 12 tablespoons of unsalted room temperature butter cut into 1-inch cubes. And I cube it just because it's easier to cream. Now you can use a stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment for this portion, or even just a regular hand mixer. I like to do things by hand, so I'm just using a regular whisk. Now, once you get this nice and smooth, you're going to add in your sugar. And I believe that was 3/4 cups of granulated sugar. I know, we're adding sugar and adding honey. It is a very sweet cake, so indulge sparingly. When I bake, it is important for me to use Canadian-made products, and if I can get as lucky as finding locally made Canadian products, it's a big bonus. This past summer, I had a wonderful opportunity to go and visit an egg farmer and view how the eggs go from chicken to my kitchen table, which was a lot of fun, and it was very enlightening. Whew. So it was a bit of a workout. I stepped away so I could continue this. With a stand mixer, it'll take about 2 to 3 minutes to whip up. You want it to be fully incorporated, the sugar, so that you can't feel any crystals if you were to take a piece and rub it between your fingers. If you're doing this manually like I am, it does take a bit more time. So once you have a nice consistency, it's smooth, it's fluffy, it's pale in color, you can go ahead and start adding your eggs. So this recipe calls for 3 eggs, large eggs. And I don't know how to break these on this table because it's too soft. All right, and we're gonna fully incorporate each egg before adding the next one. So one of my favorite parts about the chicken farm tour this summer was getting to put on the big puffy outfit. It looks like a marshmallow suit. So chicken farming is a very, I think actually all animal farming now is very secure. So in order to go in to see the chickens, we had to gown up and put booties on and wear the little hat things. It was really cute. Probably not the most flattering outfit I've ever worn, but it was really cool to go in and see where all the chickens lived. All right, so that's egg number 2. And again, I'm fully incorporating the egg before adding the next ingredient, the next egg. There we go, and the final egg. So once you have all of the eggs fully incorporated into your batter, we're going to start alternating the wet and dry ingredients to really bring this cake batter to where we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the dry ingredients that we already mixed up and the wet ingredients that we've already mixed up. Now I have not added the vanilla extract yet. I will add that at the very end so I prevent it from curdling. So start with 1/3 your flour ingredients, your dry ingredients. Basically just your flour. And I'm also going to likely switch to a spatula at some point just to continually scrape down the sides of the bowl. Okay. And now our buttermilk. And we're going to go with half of the buttermilk and honey mixture. Now this is where I'm going to bring out the spatula and just scrape down the sides to make sure that all the ingredients make it into the mixture. There we go. So the buttermilk and honey, it smells incredible already, is fully incorporated. We're going to add 1/3 of the flour. The other half of the buttermilk. Okay, so we've added the last half of our buttermilk honey mixture. Just incorporating it in, again, fully. And then we're going to go ahead and add the remaining flour ingredients. The remaining dry ingredients. I keep calling them flour ingredients, just on my mind today. So I do own a stand mixer. I just prefer to do a lot of the cooking the baking and cooking that I do, hands-on and by human power. It's how I grew up cooking, and there's an element of love and something else that just goes into things that are mixed by hand. I'm sure anybody who's been in a kitchen with their grandmother can attest to how great things that are made without the use of extra machinery, they just taste for some reason. So I have the vanilla. I'm just going to go ahead and mix it in now that the batter's all ready. There we go. So like the honey, vanilla is something I tend to measure by heart and not actual measurements. So that was about half a teaspoon of vanilla. You can give or take a little bit depending on how much you like. Now I'm going to split the batter between 2 prepared 8-inch cake pans. They've been buttered and lined with parchment. This also works really good in a muffin tin. I find that if you're going to make it in a muffin tin, that I would recommend sprinkling some berries right into the batter, and it's so good as a muffin. I use my spatula just to plop down the dough a bit, give it a little jiggle so it goes all the way to the edges. It is a thick batter, so it doesn't spread on its own. It does require a little bit of persuasion. There we go. Now these will go into a preheated oven at 350 for anywhere between 30 to 35 minutes. And you're just going to want to test it when you think it's ready. You'll test it by just pushing down on the top a little bit, and if it springs back, it's done. If you're worried about burning yourself, you can also use a toothpick or a skewer. Just stick it in the middle, and if it comes out clean, your cakes are done. All right, so we're going to wait and let these bake. While the cake bakes, let's take a moment to talk about today's ingredients. For the dairy, I've used Dairyland dairy products because I know that they are Canadian made. I've also been lucky enough to find Saskatoon berries in the freezer section of the co-op store, which is really exciting for me. Traditionally, I would go out every summer and pick berries with my family, process and freeze and for future use. With today's busy world, it's not always as easy as finding time to go out and do such traditions. So to be able to find Saskatoon berries of all things in a local department store is a huge deal. I've also used Saskatchewan-based honey in today's bake. Using local ingredients is very important to me. And I'm lucky enough that in Saskatchewan we have over 100 bee farms that produce honey. I've also used locally made eggs, or locally processed eggs. No, the chickens made them. They're locally made eggs. Like I said earlier, I got to go to a chicken farm this summer and it was so much fun. And I recently found out that all of our eggs are processed and packaged in Saskatoon, which is just a hop, skipping away from me. So that was exciting. These are all the ingredients that we used today. Welcome back. We're all done baking. So as you can see, the honey cakes have a nice golden look. Place them on a wire rack to cool for 10 minutes before loosening the edges and then removing them to cool completely on the rack before you stack and decorate. So they have a nice pushback. You can push down and it'll come back. Or like I said earlier, you can stick a skewer in and see if it comes out clean. So we're going to let these sit for about 10 minutes and then I'm going to run a knife around the edge and lift them out and let them finish cooling on the rack until they're completely cooled before assembling and eating. Now that the cakes have cooled fully, I'm going to stack them together. So this will be a 2-layer cake. I'm putting whipped cream that I've whipped while we were waiting, and berries and a drizzle of honey in between. Now you can use a piping bag like I am, or you can put it in a giant bag and clip off the corner, or you can just plunk it on with a spoon. It doesn't really matter. Because this, especially at this part, it's just going to be smushed in between the layers. So I'm going to take this top and I'm going to sprinkle some of the berries on. And now I've taken the frozen Saskatoon berries and I've let them defrost at room temperature for a few hours. You can also do this overnight. Just take the bag out of the freezer and let it sit in the fridge overnight till you're ready to use them. All right. And a drizzle of honey. I find that 2 chopsticks stuck together work really well for this. And now I'm going to plunk the second part right on top. Now if you prefer to leave this as 2 single layer cakes and just, one for yourself and one for a friend, you could do that as well. I like the look of a high, tall cake, so I'm going to stack them. And again, I've stuck with some Dairyland whipping cream. It's my go-to in this house. All right. And again, more berries. Now I'm doing a sporadic, just a sprinkling of the berries all over the top. I have done cakes like this before, where I put the berries all in the middle and then just surrounded them with whipped cream. Look at that. My bag of berries had a leaf in it. From plant to plate, right? Some proof of that. I'm just gonna go ahead and use up all of these berries, because why not? And again, a final drizzling of honey. This is a great cake to have on hand if you have somebody coming over for tea, or even as a nice summer dessert. And there you have it. Lovely berry and honey cake. Enjoy.